The flinch. Some betrayals come at you screaming. They kick down the door, shatter the glass, leave the house in ruins so you know exactly what happened. Mine came quietly. It came at 3 in the morning, in a dark bedroom, with a sleeping baby down the hall and a wife lying 3 inches away from me. A wife I had given everything to, and the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the slow, terrible realization settling into my bones like cold water. I didn't know it yet. But the man I had helped, the man I had vouched for, the man who smiled on every video call and said, "Hey Clark, how's it going, buddy?" That man had been spending months with my wife. And that was only the beginning of what I was about to find out. My name is Clark Grimby. I'm 41 years old, and if you'd asked me a year ago to describe my life, I would have told you it was solid. Not perfect, nothing is, but solid. I work remotely as a cloud architect for a mid-sized tech firm out of Seattle. Good money. Flexible hours. No commute. The kind of job that lets a man be present for his family in ways his father never could be. My wife, Norma, is 35. We'd been married 5 years when everything came apart. Our son, Caleb, 9 months old, round-cheeked, obsessed with the same 4 board books I had memorized cover to cover, was the best thing either of us had ever made. We lived in a 2-story house in Denver. Oak trees. Sidewalks. Neighbors who waved in the mornings. The kind of neighborhood that feels like a promise. I thought we were keeping it. Open book, the story begins. I want to be honest with you about something, because I already know how this might sound. I wasn't the husband who sat home while his wife carried the family. I was pulling in over $220,000 a year from my laptop, managing cloud infrastructure for enterprise clients across 3 time zones, taking calls at 6 in the morning and again at 10 at night. But in between all of that, I was also the one feeding Caleb his cereal, reading him those board books, loading him into the car for every single pediatric appointment. I was running on 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep most nights, and I did it without complaint, because that was the deal we made, and I am a man who keeps his word. What I didn't know was that Norma had quietly stopped believing in the same thing. That Tuesday in October, I remember it precisely. Caleb had finally gone down around 10:15 after 45 minutes of fussing. I was still at my desk finishing a system migration report when I heard the front door. Norma came in, dropped her bag by the stairs, and headed straight for the shower. Nothing unusual. She always showered before bed. But when she slid under the covers 20 minutes later, something felt different. The air in the room felt different. I closed the laptop and lay down beside her. She was on her side, facing away. I reached over and put my hand on her shoulder. Just a quiet, simple gesture. The kind married people make without thinking. She flinched. Not a big movement. A quick, involuntary pull away, like she'd been startled out of something far away from this room, far away from me. She covered it fast, murmuring that she was tired. But I'd felt it. That half-second of recoil lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling and thought about all the times over the past few months she'd been just slightly out of reach. The dinners where she was on her phone more than she was in the room. The weekends where she seemed restless, like our house was somewhere she was only visiting. The way she laughed differently when she mentioned certain people from work. One name had come up more than the others. Julian Steele. I knew Julian. I had recommended him for a contract position at my firm 8 months ago. He'd reached out through LinkedIn, polite, well-written, said he was looking for a foothold in cloud infrastructure. I spent 40 minutes on the phone with him. I vouched for him. I helped him get a contract with a firm in our partner network. I did all of that because it costs nothing to help someone who's trying to build something. And on every team call since, he looked directly into the camera and said, "Hey, Clark, how's it going, buddy?" Lying there in the dark, I felt something cold move through me. Not rage. Not yet. Just a quiet, terrible clarity, the kind that settles in when your body understands something your mind is still refusing to accept. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't confront Norma, either. I've thought about that decision 100 times since. And I still think it was the right call. Walking into a confrontation without anything solid in your hands is just noise. You give the other person room to maneuver. Room to deny. Room to flip it around and make you the problem. I wasn't going to hand her that. So I waited. And I watched. And what I found over the next 2 days changed everything. Because once you start looking with clear eyes, you start seeing things you somehow missed before. Mobile phone, the messages. For 2 days, I paid attention in a way I hadn't in months. Not obvious attention. I didn't hover. Didn't change my routine. Didn't give her any sign that something had shifted inside me. I just watched. She took her phone into the bathroom every single time. She angled the screen away when she typed. On Wednesday afternoon, while Caleb was napping, she laughed at something on it, a short, bright laugh, the kind she used to aim at me. When I walked into the kitchen, the laugh stopped and the phone went face down on the counter in one smooth, practiced motion. Thursday night gave me everything I needed. Caleb had woken at 2:40 with a wet diaper, worked himself into a full cry before I could reach him. I handled it, changed him, warmed a bottle, got him settled back down by 3:20. When I came back to our bedroom, Norma hadn't moved. Dead asleep. Or pretending. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen facing up. A notification banner lit as I sat on the edge of the mattress. It was from a contact saved as JS. Still thinking about tonight. You should have stayed longer. I read it twice. Then I opened the messages. She hadn't deleted them. That was the thing that reached into my chest and grabbed hold. She hadn't even bothered. Maybe she thought I'd never look. Maybe she'd gotten sloppy. Either way, it was all there. Weeks of it. Specific places. Specific times. Specific details that told me exactly what had been happening while I was at my desk running deployments and getting up at 3 a.m. to feed our son. JS. Julian Steele. The man I had recommended. The man I had vouched for. The man who had called me buddy on every team call for 8 months, like we were old friends, like he hadn't spent half that time building something with my wife behind my back. I set the phone back on the nightstand exactly where I'd found it. I didn't throw it. Didn't wake Norma up. I stood in that dark bedroom, looked at my wife's sleeping face, and felt something inside me go very, very quiet. Not numb. The opposite. Absolute. Bone-deep clarity. I went back to my desk, opened a new document, and started writing down dates, times, and everything in those messages that would matter later. I wasn't thinking about what I felt. I was thinking about what I needed. By 5:30 in the morning, I had 2 things: a clear picture of how long this had been going on, at least 4 months, and the name of a family law attorney that my closest friend, Travis, had mentioned offhand about a year ago. Scales # the attorney. Building the case. Fletcher Harding. Family law. 15 years in Denver. Travis had been through his own brutal divorce 3 years before, a wife who burned through their joint savings before he even knew what was happening. He told me Harding was the kind of attorney you wanted in your corner when things got ugly. I had a feeling things were going to get ugly. I texted Travis at 7. He called back in 4 minutes. I gave him the short version, enough for him to understand the shape of it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, low and steady, "Don't say a word to her yet. Not one word. Call Harding first." I had an appointment by 9:15. When Norma came downstairs at 8, wet hair, work bag over her shoulder, I was at the kitchen table feeding Caleb his morning cereal. She poured herself a coffee, kissed the top of Caleb's head, gave me a quick distracted smile, and said she'd probably be late again. "Okay," I said. She hesitated. Just a second. Looking for something in my expression, some crack, some sign I'd found the messages. She didn't find anything. I gave Caleb another spoonful. She left at 8:12. I watched the door close and looked down at my son. He had cereal on his chin and was grabbing at the spoon with both hands, completely unbothered by the world. "It's going to be okay," I told him quietly. I wasn't sure yet if that was true. But I intended to make it true. Harding's office was clean, quiet, composed, the kind of place that had seen every variety of human wreckage and stayed steady about it. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered strategy. That was exactly what I needed. He asked 3 questions when I finished. Was the house in both names? Was their property held solely in mine? Had I documented my caregiving role anywhere verifiable? I told him about the Porto apartment, a 2-bedroom in Portugal I'd inherited from my uncle 4 years before Norma and I even met, held in trust, never commingled with our joint finances. Then I told him about the pediatric records. He sat forward. How many of Dr. Brewster's appointments have you attended? All of them, I said. 14 visits. Norma came to one, the 2-month checkup. Harding wrote something down and underlined it twice. Give me a copy of every record, he said. Every single one. Clipboard the form. 2 weeks after I retained Fletcher Harding, Dr. Brewster's office called. They were preparing for Caleb's 9-month developmental assessment, a standard panel that required a complete parental medical history from both parents. Blood type. Genetic screening baseline. Hereditary conditions. They'd sent a form to Norma's email 2 weeks earlier. She hadn't responded. Could I follow up, or would I like a copy sent directly to me? I had it sent directly. I filled out my portion that evening. Blood type, O positive. Family history, no significant conditions. Routine. I left Norma's section blank and put the form on the kitchen counter for her. She filled it out 2 days later, without comment, and left it next to the coffee maker. I picked it up, glanced at it, and stopped. Blood type. She had written, B positive. I am O positive. I have known my blood type since I was 19 years old. There is a fact about blood type genetics that I happen to remember from a biology class 20 years ago. The kind of information that sits quietly at the back of your brain until it suddenly becomes the most important thing you've ever learned. 2 O positive parents cannot have a B positive child. I stood in the kitchen for a full minute. Just stood there, form in hand, the refrigerator humming, Caleb asleep upstairs. Then I set the form down carefully, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. I spent an hour reading medical sites, genetics references, blood type inheritance tables. Every single source said the same thing. I read until I couldn't misinterpret it anymore. Then I ordered a home DNA paternity test. Next day shipping. Delivered to Travis's address, on a credit card Norma had no visibility into. Travis dropped it off the next day at lunch. He set the package on my counter, squeezed my shoulder once, and left. He knew when words were useless. The collection was simple. A cheek swab from me. A gentle swab inside Caleb's mouth while he chewed on his teething ring, completely unbothered. Both samples sealed and sent back the same afternoon. The results window, 5 to 7 business days. I went back to work. I fed Caleb his dinner. I gave him his bath. I read him 2 books and got him down by 8:40. I did every single thing I would have done on any other evening. But something had shifted in the architecture of how I was holding myself together. I'd spent weeks operating on suspicion, on evidence of betrayal. Now I was waiting on something different. Something that had nothing to do with Norma's choices, and everything to do with whether the 9-month-old boy I had gotten up for every single night of his life was mine. Full mailbox with raised flag, the envelope. It arrived on a Thursday. Norma was at work. Caleb was napping. The lab results came as a PDF to my email, but the physical report arrived the same afternoon, forwarded from Travis's address. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it. I read the result once. Then I set it face down on the table, pressed both palms flat against the wood, and breathed. Caleb was not my biological son. I sat there for a long time. Not crying. Not breaking anything. Just sitting with the weight of it, which was considerable. The boy upstairs. The one who grabbed my finger when I lifted him. The one who recognized my voice before he recognized anything else in this world. He was not mine by blood. That changed things. It didn't change how I felt about him in that moment, not one fraction. But it changed the legal and practical reality of everything Norma had been building toward. The morning after, I called Fletcher Harding before 8. He picked up on the second ring. 0% probability of paternity, I told him. There was a brief silence. Not surprise, more like a man recalibrating the weight of what he was holding. That changes the custody picture significantly, he said. In your favor. Moneybag, what the records revealed. I hadn't slept. I'd spent most of the night going through bank records and credit card statements. Not because I needed more evidence, but because movement felt better than stillness. What I found confirmed what I'd half suspected for weeks. Norma had opened a secondary credit card 14 months ago. In her name alone, linked to a different email address. I found the statements through a joint financial account that had been used as a backup payment source 3 times when her card hit its limit. 11 spa visits in 4 months. 2 restaurant charges at $200 a visit. A boutique on Larimer Street. A medical aesthetics clinic billed as a work event. $19,400 over 14 months. Small amounts, individually. Staggering in their accumulation. I printed every statement, put them in a folder with everything else, and met Harding at his office that Thursday afternoon. He worked through the folder quietly, making notes, occasionally pausing on a page longer than the others. When he finished, he looked up. The Portugal property, you said it was inherited before the marriage. 4 years before, I told him. My uncle's estate. Held in a trust that predates the marriage. Never commingled with joint finances. He nodded. Her attorney is going to argue it became a marital asset because you drew income from it during the marriage. That's their play. We'll counter with the trust documentation and the inheritance records. Their argument falls apart the moment we produce the paperwork. I slid the second folder across his desk. 14 pediatric visits. My name on 13 sign-in records. Hers on 1, the 2-month checkup, back when we still operated like a functioning family. Harding studied them for a long moment. I want a written statement from Dr. Brewster, he said. Factual. Just what the records reflect. I'll call his office today, I said. Then, one more thing. He looked at me directly. The DNA results establish that I am not Caleb's biological father. That affects my rights and obligations, but it also establishes Julian Steele's. Once we file, his paternity becomes a matter of legal record. He will not be able to walk away from this. Harding allowed himself a small, measured expression. People who behave the way he behaved tend to find that consequences follow them. Open file folder. The filing. That evening, after Caleb was asleep, I sat on the back porch with a glass of water and thought about the next step. Norma was still moving through the house with the easy confidence of someone who believed they were ahead of the game. She wasn't. The following Tuesday, I filed for divorce. Harding's office submitted the paperwork at 9 in the morning. By noon, Norma had been served at her office. She called me 4 times before I answered. When I did, she was breathing hard, voice tight and high. You filed, she said, like it was an accusation. I did, I told her. Clark, we need to talk about this. You can't just. My attorney will be in contact with yours. That's how this works now. She went quiet. Then her voice shifted, still hard, but calculating. You think I'm just going to walk away? You think I'm going to let you take everything? I think, I said carefully, that you should find a good attorney. I ended the call, went back to my desk, and finished the workday. Classical building. The hearing. The first hearing was 3 weeks later. Norma's attorney, Preston Holt, known for aggressive opening positions, stood up and delivered a prepared speech about power imbalance and career suppression. He used the word autonomy 4 times. He suggested that Norma had lived in a household where her professional aspirations had been systematically subordinated to her husband's preferences. I kept my face neutral and let him finish. Then Harding stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He placed a single document on the table in front of the judge. A summary of household financial contributions over 5 years of marriage. Mr. Grimby contributed 83% of total household income over the course of this marriage, Harding said evenly. He funded his wife's attendance at 4 professional development conferences. He covered the full cost of childcare, home maintenance, and all living expenses while simultaneously managing a demanding remote career. He was the attending parent at 13 of 14 pediatric appointments for their infant son. He was, in every measurable way, the primary caregiver, the primary provider, and the primary constant in that child's life. The room was quiet. "The record speaks for itself," Harding said. And sat down. Red Hart hashed the man he chose to be. "I won't tell you the divorce was easy, or quick, or painless. It wasn't any of those things. There were months of proceedings, financial disclosures, legal arguments over the Porto apartment that ultimately went nowhere for Norma's team. The DNA results established Julian Steele's paternity as a matter of legal record. He was not able to walk away. His marriage to Cassandra did not survive the email I had sent from that blank account. I don't carry guilt about that. She deserved to know the truth, the same truth I had deserved. And Caleb? Caleb is still my son. Not by biology. Not by a test result or a legal document. By every morning I got up before sunrise to feed him. By every board book I read until I had them memorized. By every night I sat beside his crib and promised him, in the quietest voice I had, that he was going to be okay. The law eventually sorted out the formal arrangements. But love doesn't wait for the law. Love was already decided long before any envelope arrived. I am still the man Caleb reaches for when he's frightened. I am still the voice he knows before anything else. That is not nothing. That is everything. Life lesson. What this story taught me, and what I hope it teaches you. A betrayal of this magnitude could break a man. It nearly broke me. And if I'm being completely honest with you, there were nights in those first weeks when I wasn't sure I was going to hold together. But here is what I learned, sitting at that kitchen table with the result face down in front of me and a sleeping child upstairs. The way you respond to the worst moment of your life is the truest measure of who you are. Not the betrayal itself. Not the pain. Not even the injustice of it. Those things happen to good people all the time, through no fault of their own. What defines you is what you do when the floor drops out, whether you choose noise or clarity, revenge or justice, chaos or a plan. I chose a plan. I chose documentation over drama. I chose silence over confrontation until I had something worth saying. I chose to show up for my son every single morning, even on the mornings when I didn't know if he was mine, because love made that choice long before science could confirm or deny it. And I chose to tell Cassandra Steele the truth, not because it would help me, but because she deserved it. Because we all deserve the truth about the people who have promised us their loyalty. That is the only lesson here, and it is a big one. Be the person who keeps their word, even when no one is watching. And when you discover that someone else didn't, let the truth be your weapon, not your wound. If this story stayed with you, if something in Clark's silence, in his discipline, in the way he looked at his son and decided that love was a choice and not a blood test, then you already know why stories like this matter. We tell these stories because they are real. Because real people go through real betrayals and real heartbreak, and they find a way through. And sometimes, watching someone else find their way through is the thing that reminds you that you can too. If this story moved you, please subscribe. Leave a comment below and tell us, what part of Clark's story hit you the hardest? Was it the flinch? The phone? The envelope? Or the moment he looked at Caleb and made his decision? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most important thing we can give another person is the proof that it is possible to survive the worst thing, and come out the other side with your integrity still intact. We'll see you in the next story. Stay with us.